Yeah, so there are situations where maybe you don't necessarily want to just coat everywhere with this forest. So we can use what's called a visibility node. So if I click on that, I can add this in here. Um, and then if I go to the tab with visibility, there is something called a strength map. So you can click on this. What's kind of fun about this is you can add any mathematically driven, right, pattern. So if you look from above, this is a checker pattern. So it's only allowing trees inside the checker pattern, right? It's kind of fun. Um, or, you can have a map. You can draw a map. Let me just see if I can do maybe a ramp, right? Not sure if the ramp will work exactly, of course, but there. So there's clearly a line where it cuts off, right? So there's a few different ways to kind of control this with some additional depth. So visibility is one way. There's another way where we can go to influence. If you add an influence node, what this does is it basically creates like a little locator. And I'm just going to crank the scale up because I think my scene scale is quite high. So maybe 500 by 500. Yeah, maybe by 5,000. Yeah, 5,000, not 50,000. There. Okay, so if I pull this up or move it over, what's it going to do? Yeah, let me increase the influence power maybe, and the radius. Yeah, typically what it would do is, oh, where did my forest go? Did I lose my forest? Should be there. By the way, if you're ever like wanting to edit the nodes, which I often do now, if I go to Mash and go to Mash Editor, you can kind of turn off and on the different nodes. Typically what should happen is this influence node should allow me to kind of like make it visible or make things kind of grow and shrink wherever this influence object is. But I feel like it's acting up a bit. It's acting a bit strange. So I'm going to just right click and delete it for now. So as I said, what you can do is you can actually load objects in. So let's say I do want the trees as a forest and I want a clearing, right, for maybe an establishing shot. So I'm going to create a little image here, just a basic like alpha mask. So I'll go to new, 1024. I don't need anything crazy high res, so 1024 is fine. Create with a black brush here, and I don't know why we don't have our kind of like, there's no Photoshop brush library for some reason, but yeah, let's go to brush settings, go to size jitter, maybe a bit of scatter, just to get a bit of an organic feel here. Okay, so I'll have something like this for a bit of a clearing, okay? So I'll save this. By the way, I've set up my project folder too. It's a good habit to get into is to kind of set up a proper project folder with the right folders for your source images and things of that nature. So I'll call this forest underscore ALP for alpha. Source images, there we go, save. Okay, so let's go back to Maya. Go back to the Mash, and yes, I'll go back to the visibility here. So click on visibility, add visibility node, and for the strength, I'll just click on this, go to File, and Path Alpha, Forest Alpha, there we go. Okay, so now that's giving me this kind of nice clearing in here. So I could have you can create multiple Mash networks as well. So let me go back. I'm going to just unhide some of this other stuff that's in the scene, if I can find it. I'm just going to isolate for a second. Yeah, these are just the trees, so I'm going to hide those again. Yes, I've got this sort of rock pile, okay? So if I wanted to, let's say, place or put some rocks in the scene, here, I'll just hide these as well. Okay, I'll take this and I'll add a new Mash network. So go to Mash. Again, I want to make sure I'm going to Instancer. So I'll say Apply and Close. This time I'm going to click Placer. So again, I'll go back to Distribute. I find I have to do this all the time. So I'm going to just set the distance to 0, number of points to 1 for now. And then I'll click on Placer and add Placer. So similarly to the other mesh distribute, I'm going to middle mouse click and drag the ground, but put it into Paint Mesh. And now if I find I have to double click, so that's something else I should warn you about, but I'll double click this, and now I can paint rocks in the scene. Now they're spaced very close together, right? That's one issue. So I'm going to go to spacing and crank that up. I'm going to go to scatter. I typically like to scatter as well. And we can have random scale. So I might say, okay, let's scale between like 0.2 and maybe 1.5 times. So 20% to 150%. And again, I'll randomly rotate 360 degrees as well. And then let's try to brush these out. It's not too bad, right? Pretty cool. So what's cool about this, yeah, let's say we have kind of a rocky clearing here. You know, maybe there's like going to be a campfire and stuff around. Okay. We can check our render as well. Oops, let me just make sure I hit that. All right, so they're showing up pretty good. If you want to direct these and maybe remove some, you can double click on delete and then, oops, let me just make my brush a little bit bigger. If you hold B, left click and drag, you get a different brush size. So you can go ahead and delete. Let's say I'm going to add some back in. Again, I'm going to increase the spacing because they're very tightly packed, I think. So I'm going to just do that there. That's a little bit better. So let me undo a bit or go to delete. Just kind of clean up my scene. Okay, go back to add and with a much bigger spacing here. Maybe I'll do 80. I'll try 80 and see how that works. Yeah, it's a little bit better. All right, so you get this really, really nice kind of believable cluster, right? If you had multiples, so this would work for multiples. So if I had different objects, you see in here, there is ID mode and you can have random. So if you had selected a bunch of objects when you first created the distribute or the mesh network, you can have random variations of rocks, random variations of grasses and plants and flowers. Okay, I'll show you that next, maybe with some grass and whatnot. Pretty cool though, right? Some other things you can do, I just want to mention, is that if you double click on nudge, you can actually kind of push things around and get maybe some better spacing. Right, so that can help. It does sort of seem like they're all rotated the same way for whatever reason, but yes. And you also have collide. So what collide will do is take the existing, I feel like nudge was resetting the rotation for some odd reason, but collide, what it will do is sort of make sure that any objects that might be overlapping get sort of separated so that they're sort of physically in their own space, essentially. Okay, so collide's good for that. And if you have, let's say, this mesh network and the trees, right? If I had a bunch of stuff covering trees, so let me just do that. Let's say I went in here and like clustered up this tree. I believe collide should try to make space for that tree. Again, I'm not sure it's working the best right now, but I'll try nudge too. So sometimes I find when like collide doesn't work, nudge will help me kind of make a clearing for something. Okay.